What I really love about photography is being able to just create with friends. It's really fun to just come up with a concept and see it from start to finish. Hey, what's up? My name is Brandon Wolfel. I'm a freelance portrait photographer based out of New York. In my photos, I like to play a lot with editing to create a magical, whimsical final effect. I'm super excited for today's class to share exactly how I go about my process. I've never done something so in-depth before. And go. Nice. So why I love sharing my work across social media is just the impact it can create on someone. When I was first starting out, I didn't have a ton of different connections, whether that be places to shoot or people to shoot. So I would shoot a lot in my room or my backyard and use my friends as models. And I still do that to this day, but I kind of put a little twist on it with things I've learned. So in today's class, we'll be going over how I prepare for a shoot, the actual shooting portion, and then coming back and editing those photos and sharing those to social media. You can totally follow along by grabbing your own camera, and that could be even just your iPhone or anything you have that takes a picture. What I hope you take away from this class will just never be discouraged, whether that be the gear you're using or kind of the circumstances you're under. Just get out there and go create. In today's class, we'll be covering all of the basics and how I unlock my own creativity in what you see throughout my work. I got my start in the art world when I was younger. I was always into the drawing and painting aspect, but never kind of touched photography until I was a little bit older. I did decide to pursue art in college. I went to the School of Visual Arts in Manhattan for computer art. While in school, I was learning more 2D, 3D animation along the lines of design and more based around drawing. So when I did decide to kind of pick up photography, it felt more like a hobby instead of something I had to turn in for class. As I was starting out as a freelance photographer, Instagram definitely helped with getting connections and sharing my work to a larger audience, but also growing my work because it was something I was really consistent with, getting feedback from people that followed, and then also connecting with people that I met through the internet. While having a background in computer art, I feel like today especially, you can see it throughout my work. I like to view an image as kind of a painting and starting from scratch, really diving into those editing techniques and kind of pulling everything we can out of just one single image. A lot of the principles we'll be covering in today's class you can apply whether you have a DSLR camera or just your iPhone. So we'll be starting off with preparing for a shoot and what gear I like to bring along with me. We'll be communicating with a model, talking about the outfits and how we kind of plan the actual shoot. And on location, we'll kind of be chasing the light and kind of incorporate some of those props for nighttime. And we'll be coming back to the studio to make some selects and edit the photos. And then we'll prepare the images to be shared to social media because that's something that's a super big influence in my work, and I'll give you some tips and tricks on how I go about that. I would totally recommend this class to anyone that is starting out, but also anyone that kind of wants to up their game on the technical side of things, or also just getting out there and being as creative as possible. I totally hope you follow along in today's little photography journey and apply these into your own photo and editing skills. And if you do, make sure to share them in the project gallery so I can take a look. I'm super excited that you decided to join along with me today. So in the next lesson, we'll be covering how I prepare for a shoot and go over the exact equipment I like to bring. In preparation for shooting, of course, you need to come up with some kind of concept, and a lot of factors can come into play, whether that be the location, model, or the outfits. And that's why I kind of like to be flexible with the concept and kind of work with what I run into. For today's shoot, we'll be shooting around Brooklyn, New York, and I've actually shot around here a bunch of times, but what's fun is that the images always look different in the end. I'm always kind of taking a different route, whether that be a different turn, or maybe the lighting's a little bit different. So for this shoot specifically, we'll be starting around 6 p.m. And for me, that's a good time of day to start because we get some of that golden hour. And while the sun sets around 8:30, we can kind of go into that blue hour time of day, and then, of course, nighttime. Another thing that comes into planning, of course, when I'm shooting something at night is the props I bring along. So normally I'll kind of just bring a bag with me and pull out whatever props I feel necessary. but it also helps to use whatever you see in your surroundings, whether that be, a car's light or some kind of lighting fixture or a neon sign. The options are endless. Leading up to a shoot, I like to be super collaborative with the model I'm shooting. So we'll plan out, the time of day, location that both works for us, but we'll also go into outfits and the look we want for the shoot. A lot of the people you see throughout my images are kind of just friends, but I also connect with a lot of people across social media. So in today's shoot, we'll be shooting with my friend Isabella, who's actually a ballet dancer, so it makes for some crazy images. With Isabella, we kind of text back and forth about the outfits. So she'll send me a bunch of different options and I'll kind of like go along and heart my favorites. And that's really it. It's super easy, but we do like to change a lot of times throughout the shoot, so it makes it look like we have more variety and, shot more than we did, because who doesn't like that? I typically go for an outfit that kind of contrasts and will work well with the lighting that will come into play. So, for a darker lit image, we want to have an outfit that really pops, that you can see the model in. Also, choosing patterns that won't be too busy and distract from the overall image helps a lot. So if you're planning your own shoot, I'd totally recommend grabbing whatever camera you have, a friend, and heading outside when the light is right and just getting creative. Because we will be walking around from location to location, I do like to keep my camera bag pretty light, but I definitely do need to bring the necessities. So let's start going over what gear I bring with me on my shoots. So first is the camera itself. So with me today, I have my Nikon Z7. We have the adapter because this is a mirrorless camera, and then my 35mm 1.4. The 35mm is perfect for kind of an up-close portrait, but today we will be taking some more fuller body shots of Isabella. So we're gonna aim for some more telephoto lenses I have with me today. We have my 58mm 1.4. So this is just a little bit of a closer lens, also perfect for portraits. Moving on, we have my 85mm 1.4, getting a little closer. And then my closest lens being the 105mm 1.4. For me personally, I love investing in lenses other than, camera bodies itself because they offer so much of a different look and feel. The 35 and the 50mm honestly are just a personal preference for me, and the focal length makes for great portraits. Next thing in my camera bag, we have just these two cases. One holds all my memory cards and another is just a backup for batteries. I like to bring this little vlog camera with me on some shoots just to record some behind the scenes. This is the Lumix LX10. So if you do have an extra friend you want to bring along, recording behind the scenes is definitely worth it. That way when you share these images across social media, people can see how it was made. I also like to bring these props with me because they're super easy to carry, but they can also do crazy stuff with light while holding them in front of your lens. Both of these can kind of manipulate the lighting in frame and create some nice reflections and rainbows. For me, incorporating a new prop into my images allows me to get some kind of variety in there, and even using things you have around your house, just like a plain old CD, can change the image and make it that much more interesting. Because a lot of my shoots are kind of on the go, I do like to pack light, so some things I don't normally bring with me are tripods, flashes, or anything that can kind of weigh me down. If I am taking an image that needs a tripod, like a long exposure, that's something I'll kind of do in my room or something that's, a little bit closer to home. When shooting nighttime images, I'm not always near some kind of source of light, so I like to bring my own. First thing I like to bring with me on my nighttime shoots is this LED video light. It's perfect for having a foreground or background light to use with a subject. And it also doesn't need to be in frame all the time. You can kind of link it onto your camera. Next prop is super similar to what we just saw. Instead, it's kind of a light stick. So it does the same kind of thing. It has an RGB function, and it's super nice for lighting someone. I would use this to light a model from behind camera. When there's nothing kind of around us to do that. So this can definitely come in handy. Last thing we have is this light up moon, which is perfect for more conceptual photos at night because of how it actually looks like a moon. So this is super fun. I've also noticed when working with a model that doesn't have a ton of experience, giving them a prop to use in an image feels super natural for them, so they can hold it closer to them or even out above, and that will nicely light their face. Today we'll be shooting in manual settings, and then our image size will be setting to JPEG and RAW. I do like having both as a backup, and JPEG allows me to preview an image before we actually go into the edit. A RAW file is an unprocessed image you get from your camera, so it's, a larger image and therefore easier for us to apply our final edit on. As for settings, I do like to keep my ISO as low as possible, but of course when movement is coming into play as well as nighttime, I like to have my shutter to keep up with that. So if I do have to move my ISO up for that, we can kind of take the grain back down when we're editing later on in post. I like to keep my aperture around 1.4 to allow that kind of depth of field to come into play. I like a nice kind of creamy, blurry background behind a model, and an aperture of 1.4 allows us to do that. So I'll be sharing my settings with each image I capture on today's shoot. If you'd like a little more in-depth look on camera basics, feel free to check the in-class resources. So now that we've covered all of the camera gear and the props I bring along with me, let's get to the location and start shooting. So we made it on location. We're here in Brooklyn, New York. It's about 6 p.m., so the light is getting really goldeny and nice. We're about to wander the streets around here and find some nice streets to shoot on. But before that, let's intro our model. So this is our model for today. Come on over here.
Hey everyone.
This is Isabella. We're both based out of New York, so we shoot a lot around here. We kind of know the area. But we're gonna kind of look through the outfit she brought today and figure out what kind of looks we're gonna go for.
I brought a few looks that I think you would like.
All right, let's see what you got.
Let's go through this.
I think if we're gonna shoot daytime right now, we should save the lighter clothes for like maybe nighttime stuff.
And then I also
do you have anything a bit darker?
I have this.
I kind of like this like black and red kind of look.
Okay.
So maybe let's go for that.
Totally, I can start in this one.
Okay, sweet.
Sounds good.
And then you'll throw on your point shoes, of course. Yeah, sweet. So we made it to the first location I had in mind. I kind of actually walked past here when I was meeting Isabella. I kind of like this because of the two sides of the trees like intertwining. It can make for a really nice perspective shot. I have my Nikon Z7 with me, but we're gonna switch to my 85 to make it a little bit more telephoto, especially because we were shooting Isabella full body. And something I like to do before shooting the model in place is just getting my settings correctly. So I'll probably just stand right here and see what we're working with. I always have settings from like the shoot before on. So let's just take a test shot right now. So right now I have my shutter to 1/1000th, and then my ISO I'm gonna boost up to just 160. We're setting our shutter a little bit higher because of the motion we're about to shoot. And then I'm just gonna go in and change my white balance to whatever looks the best to me personally. So we're gonna move from auto to cloudy, just it gives a little bit of a nice glow. I feel like that looks pretty accurate to real life. So right now it's a kind of nice soft light we're getting back here. And that way it won't distract too much from the model because of Isabella's posing is a little bit more complex than we're used to. So we can have the background just be a nice like little painting behind us. Let's do a jump. Can we do a jump? Yeah. So I'm gonna go to continuous shutter just so I can click as fast as possible and get the movement at the right time. All right, let's try this out. First test shot, let's go for it. And go. Nice. I have this CD I just bring as a prop. It's super easy to throw in my bag, and it creates the kind of lens rainbow refraction right in front of your lens so you don't have to do anything in post. And I kind of just experimented with how close or far I'm holding it from my lens, and that way it'll give you kind of a different type of look, whichever way you're holding it. What's nice also about using the CD is once you get a shot that looks like you have the rainbow kind of in frame, in the edit, duplicate that and post it to a photo that actually didn't have the rainbow, and then it's looked like you did it, but you actually didn't in person. Go for it. Nice. And go. Nice, got it. I move kind of really fast when I'm shooting, especially when I'm shooting with a high continuous shutter. I feel like I got what I needed at this spot, so we're gonna keep moving. As we were walking around trying to find some nice light with this golden hour happening behind us, we found the light kind of nice backlighting through these trees right here. So I'm gonna have Isabella stand right in front of that and do like a nice slow hair flip and keep my settings around how they were. We need to capture that motion pretty still. So we have our shutter at 1 6/40. And then our ISO is at 250 because we want to keep that low. But it's not that hard with the nice light we have right now to keep that ISO as low as possible. For this shot, we're not gonna do full body just because there's a lot of people coming in and out. So we're gonna shoot waist up, and I'm gonna have her focused before she goes into the motion, just to make sure I know where she's about to land that hair flip. Come up just real quick to focus, and then, 1 sec. And then you're good to go whenever. The light right now is like really harsh behind you, so you're kind of like silhouetted, but it looks nice. Come a little closer if you can, more like right here. Yeah. And go for it. Nice. Oh my God, that's like, we got it. I also quickly just switched my 85 to my 35, just because we're getting a little bit closer in on her, but I also wanted to capture some of those like sun rays we're about to see with the backlight coming through. So the 35 will be perfect for that. Okay, let's actually move down just a bit because this trash. So we still have some golden hour happening. We walked a block down to this little railing. We're gonna have Isabella kind of use this to her advantage with posing. That's something I like to look for a lot when I'm shooting with someone, especially when they're a dancer. So we're gonna get, again, some nice backlight shots, but instead more full body because we got a waist up shot, so. Because she's just doing one single motion, I'm just gonna do single shutter so I don't get too many photos, just a few. Shake your hair a little bit if you can in that pose, just kind of like wave it. For one final shot at this location, I'm just switching my lens from my 35 to my 58 1.4, just because I think that this shot I'm getting will look a little bit better with the background slightly more blurred. And since the 58 is a closer prime, it'll give us that effect. So let's go for it. Same thing before the light is like completely gone. Nice, perfect. So as we're making our way down to the skyline where golden hour is happening, I kind of stumbled upon this little like pathway. And this is something I really like because it doesn't look like New York, so it adds some kind of variety in the shots we're getting. So we're gonna have Isabella right in the middle of this. I have my 85 on so we can kind of get that depthy look with our telephoto, semi-telephoto lens. And my settings are pretty much the same as earlier. So let's get you like right in the middle over there. And go for it. That was good. Let's do one with both hands up. Yeah. And go. Nice. That was a good one. All right, let's walk to the little skyline. Lens caps on. Love that. So we made our way down to the water with the skyline behind us. The sun has basically set, so we're getting a lot of nice soft colors behind us. And we're gonna have Isabella pose against this railing. I also have my 105 millimeter on. So we can kind of get rid of that busyness behind her and get it a little bit more flatter. And I will have to compensate my settings just for how dark it's getting, but we should be good on a pretty low ISO right now. I wanna come right against this and just kind of look out. You might actually wanna be on point just to get a little taller, but move to the right a little bit just so you're nice and even. Yeah, that looks really nice there. So I briefly just took a test shot with the 105 and I actually didn't love it. You couldn't even see really the skyline because it was super up close in telephoto. So I might switch back to my 35 or 58 and see how that looks. Because we're having Isabella stand in a kind of still position, we can have our shutter a bit lower at 1 2/50 of a second, and then our ISO is around like 500, so it's not too high. Nothing we can't fix when we're editing. I like that. I also don't need to be in continuous like crazy just because we're getting some single frames here. Yeah, perfect. Keep moving. I like that a lot. Maybe off to the side. Do that again, that hair flip. That was cool. Nice. Relating back to my shutter, I don't like to have it anywhere below 250 just in case I capture some blurry movement, because I do like to have my model move when she's posing in kind of like a slow, authentic way. So I want to make sure I'm capturing all those little shots. 1 and 250th right now is perfect just for that. But you can always change it if you want to play around with more movement. I just like to make sure that we're getting some crisp, clear shots and nothing is out of focus or blurry. So we just finished up taking our daytime portraits. It's definitely getting a little bit darker. So we're gonna take a break. Isabella's also gonna change, and we're gonna take some nighttime shots and incorporate in some fun props, so stay tuned. So now we're gonna dive into some nighttime portraits. We made it to this little beach here in Brooklyn, New York, and some key differences between daytime and nighttime is obviously the lighting. So to counter that, we have this little prop here we're going to use. So this lights up, it's a little moon. And I don't like using flash in my photos. So instead I like to incorporate these little guys that will light our subject when there's no available light. Okay, let's have you over here. I'm gonna use kind of this log as leverage to get a little higher than you. But if you wanna kind of come, let's see. Let's go like right over here. Can you actually sit up and just like kind of like hold it? Yeah. Cool. I might get a little lower for a different angle, but I'm really liking this above shot right now. Kind of hold it to you. I also switched my white balance just because it was a little too warm from the golden hour shots. We have our shutter at 1/200th, and then our ISO is pretty high at 3200, but it's not anything too crazy that we can't fix later. I'm also shooting with my 35mm 1.4 to get a little bit of a wider shot here. Yeah, I'm actually liking this lower shot. Cool. Could you actually bring it up to you again? That was, yeah, my fave. Bring it a little in front of you if you can, with one hand maybe. You can keep your yeah, and then just bring it a little forward, yeah. I think for shooting with the prop, it's best to have it light the model's face and making sure it's kind of at an even angle and not too low, too high, but like just right. I kind of like your body just like behind you, if I'm like from my angle. So let's have it here, and then you're just like straight bodies like that way.
Straight this
Yeah, there you go. You can bring maybe a foot, like your feet, like a little bit, yeah. Maybe you're even like picking it up. Nice. Okay, cool. Let's do a standing one with you just like over here with it holding up to you. That way it's less harsh on your face. Hold it up to you and maybe away, like a little bit away, like this way. Yeah, it's like a baby. So we finished at that last location and now we're headed to our next one. I'm having a little trouble finding out where I wanted to shoot next because things at night get a little bit tricky with lighting. It's a little bit funky and weird right here, so we're gonna keep looking. So we kept walking on the pier. We came about this little light fixture that's in front of the skyline. And I think it'll be perfect for lighting Isabella, just because that backlight will come into play in the background, but we need some kind of light in the foreground as well. Because I think I want a wider shot here, I'm gonna aim for my 85 if I can get it out here. I have my 35 on from that last shoot on the beach. The 35 right now is a little bit too wide for me, so I think the 85 will be perfect for this image I have kind of constructed in my head. And go. Because these lights are a little bit lower, can you actually get low too? I like this because it's kind of lighting her from the back, but also the front. Bring your arm in a little more, and then look up at your leg. You can straighten your arm. This looks really cool. And go. Nice. Try again. So I'm changing my shutter to 1 1/100th of a second just so we can capture the movement she's giving to us, but make sure it's in focus and super clear. And go. Cool. My shutter is now at 320 just because she's not moving too much, and I can put my ISO a little bit lower. I know a lot of people get intimidated kind of by shooting at nighttime, but something I always do and suggest is kind of applying those daytime tips I let you guys know earlier, but get a little more creative with the lighting. So using a lighting prop or a fixture around, you could use some car lights or lamps. Honestly, anything to avoid that grain will help you get a final clear and crisp photo. For me, shooting at night is definitely worth the extra kind of effort you have to put in, whether that be a prop you're bringing into play, just because it's more fun. You get more creative, you get some crazy kind of backdrops and light that are coming through that are a little bit challenging, but at the end of the day, it's like, and that's what makes it fun. So now that we finished up the night shoot, we're going to head back to the studio, wrap it up, and go through some of these selects and start editing. So we're back from the shoot. I hope you guys enjoyed all of the behind the scenes footage of getting creative during golden hour and nighttime. But now that we're back, we can go through the selects and start narrowing down which exact photos we want to edit. Narrowing down selects doesn't get super technical for me. I just do a lot of comparing and contrasting. There are definitely times when looking through my selects that certain images just don't work out. I always want to save them because we really worked hard on getting that image on location, but sometimes you just gotta let it go and you won't be editing that photo, and that's totally fine. So while on my shoot, I always have a few favorites in mind, but obviously when you get back from your shoot and you blow those up, some things may be out of focus or blurred. So it helps for me personally to have those JPEGs to keep previewing because they are in a smaller megapixel than the raw files, which we'll be going in and editing. So I went ahead and opened up my JPEG previews on my laptop right here. And I've already narrowed down some of my favorites, but I also wanted to show you why certain ones wouldn't work and why I wouldn't edit them. So this shot we got during golden hour of Isabella is super perfect because of how the light is shining right through her waist and her hair. But I wanted to show you guys this one, which we got right afterwards, that I would not select. I kind of tossed this to the side. As you can tell, the light is kind of coming at her from a different angle. The composition overall just isn't as sharp as this one. When narrowing down selects, I like to kind of pick one or two per location, but I'll make sure if she is changing poses, we take that into account and kind of treat that as a different entire image. Moving along, we have this image, and I also have this other image we took exactly right after once again. For me personally, I would go with the first one as an image to edit just because of the angle. You can tell I kind of got down on the ground and got a more straighter image with the composition being nicely framed. And you can kind of see this depth blurring off to the side, which I feel like acts as a nice focal point to Isabella and her point feet. Of course, when shooting full body, you're not always going to get the entire person in the shot because of how they may be stretching or elongating themselves. There are times where I will crop the person out or not get them into focus. In this instance, I guess I was shooting a little too fast and didn't realize that her feet were cropped out, but we made sure to take another one where she was nicely framed. This one here is another instance where the crop is something that I wasn't entirely focused on, but we went back and fixed it and got more of that skyline. I like the composition of this a lot because it doesn't totally crop out some of the cityscapes behind her. When shooting, I like to keep in mind a lot of how I'm playing with angles. So I like to get really high up or really down low. For this shot, I really liked getting the above ground. If you compare these two images with this one being more of a straight on angle, you see more of the background, but I feel like it gets rid of the total mysterious vibe that was giving off in the first one, which I kind of like. For the nighttime shooting, we were trying to play with different light fixtures that were kind of in our surroundings. With this shot, with the light fixture being kind of lower on the ground, you could tell that Isabella's face wasn't completely lit. So I had her kind of do a different pose on the ground. And in this image, you can totally tell her face is lit and it's an overall just better image. With this shot of Isabella in the park doing a jump, I kind of did this shot a few different times because, of course, when you're taking another image, the angle of you and the person you're shooting isn't always going to be the exact same. So taking that same pose you just did and doing it a few more times helps a lot because, as you can see, these compositions do vary. This one, you can tell she's a little more straight on and the image is just more pleasing to the eye versus this one where she's a little off-centered and the kind of focal plane is a little off for me. So I'd totally go with this one right here. With this shot right here, we implemented the CD effect, so it gave us a nice subtle rainbow on the bottom. But as you can see, Isabella's pose wasn't completely full. In post, I'd love to apply the rainbow to this image where Isabella is in her complete dancer form. And that way we can just take the rainbow as a transparent and move it on to the image where it's composited better. The number of selects I choose from shoot to shoot definitely vary on the amount of locations and outfits we got. But normally it takes me about a half hour to an hour to kind of sift through those images. So the goal for this class is to have one final daytime and nighttime portrait so we can go in and edit it further. As for my daytime selects, I'm going to choose this image right here. I really like how sharp it is, but also the leading lines give it a nice effect. But we're just going to throw this rainbow on here and copy it over to the final image I'm going to select. As for the nighttime images, my final selection is going to be one with the moon lamp lighting Isabella's face. At first glance, this image looks super dark, but we intentionally did that because she wasn't moving too much. We were able to keep our shutter pretty low. We'll really see when we open this photo up if the grain is too much to save, but I think we're okay. So next up, we're gonna go in and edit the daytime photo. So in this lesson, we're going to be editing the daytime select I just chose. So I have my kind of folder open right here. We have my JPEG and my RAW file next to each other. I have my Wacom tablet that I edit with hooked up to my Mac. For me, I find it really hard to use a mouse while editing because things get really technical. I like to almost kind of paint over my images and feel like I'm really kind of in it. So this tablet acts as kind of a connect to that without using a mouse. So we're just going to open this file and it'll open in Camera Raw on Photoshop. So let's just double click. So now that we're in Camera Raw, the file has opened as a non-processed photo. So I like to think of Camera Raw as kind of editing the image before it's exported out of the camera. So within Camera Raw, you can change things like temperature, tint, white balance, exposure, and so on, and it won't mess up too much with your image as long as you don't go crazy with it. So right now we're in the basic panel and we're going to just play around with everything here. I really like to go through each panel and play with everything. That's why it kind of takes so long to edit, but for me, it's definitely worth it. I also like just playing with auto and seeing what it can give us. So you can tell that it's kind of evening out the highlights and the shadows, which I totally like to do. So I'm going to leave that in auto and play a little bit more. We're going to boost the shadows up a bit. And then along with shadows, I always like to use a little bit of contrast. We'll also be playing with the white balance a little bit because I like to have it really custom. And on my camera, it only really gives you, certain presets if you don't really go in there. So I just use the white balance presets and then I come in Camera Raw and I play with them even more. So as you can see, I'm kind of particular with dragging these notches. I'm going super slowly and making sure everything is aligned with how I like it. Something I always do is boost my clarity. So we're just going to do that a little bit to make sure she's nice and in focus. All right, let's move on to the next panel, but we may come back to this one. Now we're in the hue, saturation, and luminance adjustments. So this is something I like to play a lot with. Each slider you see in the hue selection will change the color that it presents. So the reds will change the reds to a more pink or a more orangey tone. And we're just going to keep going and play with each one. Right now I'm just looking at it if each color is changing and to what color I like it. As you can see, her skin tone is kind of blending in with the background color, which may be a problem later on, but we're going to get to that. Let's go to saturation now and play some more with these. There's a lot of yellow in this image, so we're going to keep the saturation just as is. Luminance will kind of boost that color's vibrancy. So as you can see, the yellow is kind of boosting that while keeping the same kind of tone. We're going back and forth, as you can see, because other things will adjust themselves. I always kind of zoom out as well just to see how it looks, kind of get a better eye. Okay, we're going to move on to split toning. So this section is separated into highlights and shadows. and the hue will place kind of the color that it shows within the highlights of the image. So if we up the saturation, you can see that on the highlights it's making it a little more red. It comes in handy if you know complementary colors because of how they're interacting with each other. So I don't do too much here, just a little bit. Visually, I feel like the shadows don't need an emphasis in any color, so we're just gonna keep going. Moving on to the effects panel, we can play a lot with grain and vignetting. I don't really touch the grain because I like to have my images without grain, but I will play a little bit with vignetting and have a little better focus on Isabella. So I kind of like how that one is. I'm really particular with it. I don't move it too much, as you can see. This is one of my favorite panels. It's the calibration panel. And this just kind of plays with the colors in a more dramatic way. We're just going to go through each of these sliders and see what it comes up with. It's all about kind of experimenting through and seeing what you like. The green slider is giving us a lot of different information because of how the colors are on the image. There's a lot of green going on. So we're getting a lot of dramatic changes with this one. Let's move on to the blue. The blue is doing the same, but not as much. Cool, I'm gonna go back to basics and just kind of see if everything's looking how I like. Because it's a daytime image, it doesn't need too much correction. Sometimes with the darker lit images, they require more steps in camera raw. So this one's looking pretty nice. So under the image, there's actually some more options right here. And this one in specific cycles between the before and after. So it gives you a nice side-by-side of the unprocessed image versus the one I just edited. And from this point, you can play with the options even more because I find when viewing the before and after, it gives you a nice kind of scale of where you're at with the image. So I feel like my saturation is a little bit bright right now. So we're just gonna come down here and put the vibrance down just a bit. I totally feel like when I first see a few images at first glance, I get a kind of idea of how I wanna edit it, but it definitely comes about when I'm doing the actual editing itself. And also what mood I'm in if I want to go really hard with the edit or I want to keep it kind of soft and subtle. At this point in the process, we can actually save this preset because I'm pretty happy with it. So this preset will save all of these adjustments that we just made. And to note that this doesn't always work great when applying these corrections to a whole different image, but more of an image from the same shoot and location, if that makes sense. So we're just going to go ahead and save this and call it Isabella Trees. All right, and let's go ahead and open that image. All right, so my initial thought for this image was to implement in that rainbow from our other shot. So let's go ahead and do that. At this point in the process, we're going to unlock our base layer and duplicate it. Just in case we do anything funky with the original one, we have a copy to go back to. So we just opened our raw file with the rainbow reflection in it, and all we're going to do is go over here and press previous conversion. That way, it'll give us the same edit we applied to on our previous one. So we're just going to go ahead and open that. Now within the image that has the rainbow in it, we're going to head over to our lasso tool and go in and select all around that rainbow. And then we're going to go to Edit, Copy, and then come over to our original photo and paste that selection. We're going to play around with transforming it, so Command-T. And then we're going to head over to our blending modes above our layer and sort through. I think lighten will be perfect for this. And then we're just going to drag over and see how that is looking. We're going to head over to our eraser tool. We're going to put the hardness down to 0 and boost the size up even more. And then go around those hard edges and kind of get rid of those. We're also going to head over to the opacity and play around with that because 100 is seeming just a little bit too intense for me. So we're going to continue playing with this rainbow effect and kind of minimizing it, but also making sure you can see it. We're just going to play a little bit with this transform tool once more. Command and holding some of these corners will also kind of skew it. I like doing that a lot. And then, yeah, I'm kind of into that. We're just gonna zoom in here and get a little specific with the grass that you can see. For me, it feels a little distracting, so we're just gonna use the patch tool and kind of go in and drag over to a selection that we want over the texture of the grass. So we're just going in here very subtly. Now that we feel pretty confident with the rainbow and how it's looking, we're going to create a color selective mask so we can play a little bit more with the colors that came from Camera Raw. So on our bottom right layer panel, we're gonna head over here and go to selective color. And now that things are getting a little bit more busy, we're gonna start naming our layers right here. Our base layer, base copy, rainbow, and selective color is opened up right there. So we're gonna make sure that this selective color mask is above everything else because it will change whatever hues we're selecting for whatever is underneath it. I play a lot with selective color, but I don't always know exactly what my goal is, but I find that going through kind of every color will give you a different effect. So for me, it's all about just experimenting. So we're gonna start playing around with the reds. We're heading over to the greens because there is a lot of green in this photo as well as yellow. I tend to make greens a little bit more on the bluer side. I just feel like it adds some fun. And then our neutrals will kind of give a nice base overlay color with whatever you start to select. So we're gonna go in with cyan, magenta, and then we have the yellow and the black, and we're just gonna keep playing around with that. I'm also noticing that this feels a little bit off. I'm just gonna straighten it. We're gonna go over to our crop tool and just do a little bit of straightening. Nothing crazy. Cool. While I edit, I do like to kind of switch around. So I'm gonna go back to this rainbow. It's kind of bugging me. And we're just gonna make it a little bit less on her point right here, her point toe. The longer I stare at an image, the more kind of things I see. Next thing I'm noticing about this image is the light is kind of hitting her from above, and the light on her stomach is a little bit more saturated. So we're just gonna go in there and literally just unsaturate it on this copy layer. So we just headed to our desaturation tool, which is the sponge tool, and we're just gonna zoom in on here and kind of desaturate her stomach just slightly. And in that same selection where the sponge tool was, we're gonna head over to our dodge tool, make that a little bit brighter, and just make her stomach also a little bit brighter. So the dodge tool makes highlights, midtones, and shadows brighter, while the burn tool makes those same ranges darker. So if I zoom out, you can kind of see the before and after. It's a slight just match to her skin tone. What I do a lot is I go back to this original frame and we can kind of see what we've done so far. So just a lot of selecting and unselecting, making sure we're liking it. And with these different layers, of course, we can go back in and play around with anything without being too destructive. So we're just gonna go back into this selective color panel and play a little bit more with that. Another thing I like to do sometimes is bring over the original JPEG image and layer it over what we're creating. This way you can kind of see what you've done, and sometimes you may go back some steps and feel like you've gone too far, so this is perfect for just kind of a nice original frame. Because remember, this base layer still has our Camera Raw settings on it. So these are the steps so far. We have our original frame, our Camera Raw frame, our frame with the dodge and burn and desaturation tools on it, our rainbow lens flare, and our selective color. So now that we've done all of that, the final two steps I want to go over are a subtle radial blur effect and the curve layer. With radial blur, you can actually pick the center of where you want the blur to happen. So it'll kind of do exactly what it says. It'll radial blur the entire image. And from there, I'll just go in and erase what I want in focus. So for the radial blur effect, I'm actually going to select all the layers that we have done already and duplicate them. And then from there, we're going to combine them with Command E. And so that is every layer we just created in one single layer. Now that we have this one layer, we're going to head over to Filter, Blur, and then Radial Blur. Down on the right side, it'll give you a nice range of where the blur center will be. So we want that right in the middle. And we want our amount to actually just be 1 because it can get really intense. So as you can see, we're going to switch off from this layer to our original ones. It's very subtle, but I like it for just blurring the background just a bit, and it works perfectly with these leading lines. But to be sure that Isabella is in complete focus, we're going to zoom in on here and see that the radial blur effect is kind of affecting her as well. Okay, and we're going to go in with our eraser tool, and with a big size brush, go in and just kind of erase anything that we want in focus, but keep it light. Because we don't want to see a complete shift from the radial blur to what's in focus, so we're just do a light touch. Right here you can see the difference between what's in focus and what is having the radial blur effect. So what we're going to do is make that eraser brush size a little bigger. Zoom out and make sure it's nice and blended. And of course you could play with the opacity if it's too strong, which I do here and there. But I kind of like it strong on this image. And it's really subtle, but it adds a nice little touch, and people notice it too. Last thing we're going to do on this image is our curves. So this will play a lot with the tones of the image. And I have a kind of little trick I like to do with this to make the shadows a little bit more moody, I guess you could say. So we're going to head over to our same mask that we did selective color in, but do curves. So with this curve mask, it'll give us a more fine-tuned look into our exposure. So on this right side, you can see we have our highlights and then we have our shadows. I'm going to bring our shadows a little bit inward so it's more contrasted, but bring that point above this set line. It's definitely a subtle look like we've been doing this whole time, but altogether they come out to be, one final look. But if we zoom in here on the right side, you can see that it gave the shadows a little bit more of a tone instead of that hard black, which I just like the look of a lot. And we can, of course, keep going in and tweaking that. One final thing I'm going to do really quickly is vignette her a little bit more. So I'm just going to create a layer right here. And with our brush tool, we're going to head over and make a giant sized brush with no hardness and go around the edges really quickly. And then head over to our blending modes and head over to soft light and then kind of decrease that a ton. But it gives a little bit more of a focus on Isabella. So for me, I feel like we finished this image. We have everything I look for in something, a nice set subject along with some nice effects to go along with it. I really like how the radial blur is complementing Isabella and the colors we got from selective color. I feel like everyone develops kind of their own editing style as they come to edit more. And for me, I found a lot of help with just fine-tuning a lot of different things. And those different things kind of add up into one final image that we see here. Now that you've seen how I would edit a daytime image, let's move to the nighttime photo. Now that you've seen my process on how I go about editing a daytime photo, we're going to switch on over to our nighttime select and start editing that. There are some differences when I go about editing a daytime photo versus a nighttime one. First off being that there is some grain we have to uncover because of how low light we shot in. So let's just go on and open this image and see what we're dealing with. So we opened our raw image, and this is the same interface we were dealing with on our daytime image. So we're gonna come on over here and press auto just to see what it will give us. And it actually does a pretty good job at that. So I'm gonna actually stick with that and tweak it from here. As you can see, the moon is kind of blown out just because we couldn't shoot any lower than we already did. So we're gonna just go in and decrease that so you can see some of the detail in the moon right here. And then come on over here to our whites and just increase that so it's a little bit more contrasted. And then we're gonna come in and boost our shadows. There is a slight vignette on here, which we might not want, but we'll save it for later. Come on over here to contrast and play with that. Again, we're just kind of going through and tweaking some of these colors, temperatures, and contrasts. For this, I'm imagining a little bit more of a blue tint, so we're gonna go over to our temperature and decrease that a little bit. I like that. Our shadows are gonna go up a little bit more. And as you can see, there's some grain, but when we will be sharing these images across social media, you won't really see. And also, we have some techniques to get rid of that. Noise reduction is a great place for grain and getting rid of that. So we have some luminance sliders right here, but they're all looking fine to me, so we're just gonna keep moving on to our hue, saturation, and luminance layer. I'm going through and tweaking these hues right now. Her skin tone is a little bit orange right now. I think we can get rid of that within saturation and decrease that just a tad bit. And then in luminance, just increase that. I like that a lot. And as you can see, she's nicely in focus. There's a lot of blue happening behind her, so we're gonna keep tweaking those. I like a little bit of a turquoise look in my blue. We're gonna play with our blues in the luminance layer and just increase that a bit. You can see there's like some nice bokeh happening back here from the lights behind her. We're back in our calibration layer and we're just kind of tweaking this one just slightly. I'm liking how her skin is looking with that kind of hue right here. I think I do want to increase the orange luminance just a bit. And then go back here and increase the whites just a bit. And then our shadows will just boost to 95. I like that. Moving on to split toning, I think the highlights here will give us a nice effect because of how red her skin is against this blue. So we're gonna head over to a nice kind of green blue hue and complement that red skin. As you can see, it's kind of evening it out back into the background of her. And I'm really liking that. So I think we're ready to open it into Photoshop. So let's go for it. So now that we've opened up the image in Photoshop, just like the daytime photo, we're going to unlock this layer and duplicate it, just so we can come back to that one as a before, but also if we mess up anything. So at first glance, something that's throwing me off is the top right of it. I really like how the water is looking and these kind of nice reflections, but it just kind of cuts off on the left side. So my first thought for solving this little black side on the left is to try content aware, because that's kind of just the fast version of what I would do instead, which is just duplicate this information. So let's go on to the lasso tool and select this side. We're gonna head over to Edit, Fill, and then Content Aware, and see how it looks. Okay, I'm not mad about it. So we're going to just fix up this side with Content Aware once again. So what Content Aware does is it kind of takes all the information that it sees in the image and it takes the selection that you're making and tries to make a best bet of what you're trying to do. So a lot of the time it doesn't work out, but when it does, it's really a quick way to get a fix you need. As you can see, it didn't totally do what I wanted it to do, so we're gonna go ahead and do it manually, but I do like how it got rid of that black. So we're just gonna go in and select this part of the image. We're gonna go to Edit Copy and then Edit Paste. And then we're gonna Command T, transform that over to this side. I think we only need about 1.5 like that. So we're just gonna go in and erase this side and make it a nice soft eraser. We have it about 1,700, just because I want a soft transition. And then we're gonna zoom in on here and kind of get rid of this hard layer with a smaller eraser brush. And you can always look underneath kind of what you're editing, so I can see how this line is pulling up, so I can kind of follow that. And you can also do this by throwing the opacity a bit down. Cool. All right, let's back up from this image and see how it looks. I'm definitely liking that. Let's see what it did. What I do notice though is that the sides are definitely vignetting. We're gonna take our burn tool on the midtones, take our brush a little bit higher and just kind of make that a little bit darker, not so crazy. Just so it transitions a little bit nicer. Nice. That's just kind of like a perfectionist thing, but I think that it makes the image a lot more eye-catching and less distracting because your eye kind of goes to that black spot in the upper left. Cool. And now what we're gonna do is combine this layer into our other base layers because I know that I want it to stay. I'm really confident with it. So we're just gonna go in here and combine these layers. Let's of course name these while we're at it. All right, let's zoom in here and just see what we're working with. Next thing my eye goes to is this little white stuff on the bottom left, which is probably just some kind of trash. So we're just gonna patch tool it out. So we're gonna select it and move it over to a texture that we want, right here, and there you go. Next thing we're gonna do is kind of dodge and burn this whole image, so making midtones, highlights, and shadows a bit darker or brighter. So what I like to do to make it as non-destructive as possible is create a whole another layer where we'll be doing the dodging and burning. So we're going to create a new layer, go to Edit, Fill, and 50% gray. And then we're gonna go over to the blending mode and go over to Overlay. So as you can see when clicking off and on this layer, it doesn't do anything. But if we apply dodging and burning, it will do it without affecting the layer itself. It's kind of doing it non-destructively, and we can always delete this if needed. So while dodging and burning, I like to get any unnecessary shadows out of frame. So as you can see on the side, there's some weird darkness happening. So if we click on our dodge shadows, we can kind of bring those up. And now we're gonna head to burn and just kind of darken the midtones up here because it's a little bit too bright for me. I almost like the focus actually on Isabella, so I actually might go in here and darken some of the sand that I was just making light, but I think it's just a different look that I'm into right now. And again, this is just a layer that we can start over or get rid of if needed. We can look how it's doing. So it's just making the image more even and more focused on Isabella instead of kind of this textured sand around her. This spot in particular is a little bit bright for some reason, so we're just gonna go in here with the highlights on our burn tool and get rid of that. So you can see kind of these weird highlights that were happening probably from the spotlight near us. So we're just gonna try and get those as even as possible. Even things like this giant black part of sand, we can patch tool out as we come across it. Just quickly as we move along. Definitely like to zoom in just to see if we're missing anything. I'm gonna head back to our dodge and burn layer, which I'm going to name as well. Also, if we bring in our image of Isabella from the JPEG version, we can see how much information we brought back, and it really shows you how powerful our raw file was. Now at this point in the process, I feel pretty confident with what we've done so far with our camera raw and dodge and burn effects. So now we're gonna go ahead and do selective color and curves like we did in our daytime image. So go to our layer mask and hit selective color, and making sure that all of our other layers are below this. Moving forward with the reds, we can kind of play around with her skin tone because you can clearly see the contrast from her skin to the water. I also kind of like the color contrast that's happening between the blue and the red. So with selective color, we're going to now like emphasize that because I'm really liking it. We're gonna play a lot with the red panel switches right now, just what is looking best to my eye. And then we're gonna head over to the blue. It's not picking up as well, I think because this blue is maybe registering as cyan, so let's switch to that. Yeah, so it's working a little bit better. We're gonna boost up a little bit of the information here in the blacks. Awesome. Now for the final adjustment, we're gonna go and head over to our curves layer. So we're gonna make a curve mask really quick and do what we did in our daytime image and make those blacks a little bit more muddier and kind of give them some more tonal range. Also, adding a curves layer onto this specific image kind of balances it out. I feel like maybe the lighting on her was a little bit uneven. So this kind of gives it an overall nice tone. Cool, and let's just see how that looks. Cool, we can drag that above our selective color and then just kind of lower it a bit or higher it if we need it. We're gonna zoom in as well and just see if everything is looking good. I actually might sharpen her face just a bit. And we can also even just dodge and burn parts of her hair right here. I like to take the highlights that are throughout the image and just kind of make them a little bit more dramatic, even if they're on the person. So just taking these highlights in her hair that are catching onto her and making those a bit more emphasized. Even on her face, we can use a little bit more of midtones right here. As you can see, the light from the moon is casting onto her face directly, but it's kind of fading away down below by her feet. So we're just gonna make that a little bit more bright in these shadows really quick. I kind of like how you can see this kind of sand texture near her feet. Sharpen that a bit. And choosing a lighter and brighter colored outfit for this look really came in handy because she doesn't fade too much into the background. So the outfit is really helping us here. You can go on and on with this, but you also have to know when you're done, and that's coming up. We're gonna zoom into the moon real quick and kind of burn down these little textures you see here to make it look like a really realistic moon. Cool. I like that a lot. I'm done. So I'm really loving all the adjustments we made on this particular image. Now we're just gonna go and save it. So we're gonna head on over to File, Save As. I like to save my files as a PSD and a JPEG just in case we wanna go back into it later. We can with the PSD. We're just gonna name our file Isabella Moon and save that real quick. Make sure the layers are selected within the saving format. And then we're gonna save it again as a JPEG. So we're gonna go on over here to Format, JPEG, and make sure that it saves with maximum quality. So you get this option right here. This is a little bit big, it's 34 megabytes because it's a raw file. So if you do wanna make it a little bit less, you still have the maximum quality of 10, and that is at 13 megabytes. Just because I have a lot of storage, we're gonna go with the largest one and save that. So I developed this way of editing just by trial and error and a lot of experimenting, but I would love to see you guys take what I kind of went over, but also apply it into your own photos in your own way. Feel free to go more in depth into whatever program you're editing and play around with all the tools it gives you because I definitely didn't touch on all of them. So next up, we're gonna send these final photos to my phone, make some tweaks, and share them to social media. Let's go. Now that we've exported our images in high quality, we airdropped it on over to our phone, so now we can see them. Sometimes for me personally, what you see on your monitor isn't always what you see on your phone. And because we'll be sharing these across social media, we want them to look as great as possible. When I'm on a shoot and I'm capturing high quality images, I definitely like to opt for a program like Photoshop. But for iPhone images or photos on the go, I really love Visco. And also some collage apps I like are Collageable and Image Blender. So within the photo itself, in my camera roll, I'm actually gonna just make a few tweaks here. We're just gonna click on a photo, go to Edit. We're gonna head over to our brightness and play around with things here. We have brilliance, exposure, highlights, shadows, brightness, contrast. So we have it all, and we can go in here and really tweak some fine adjustments that we really wanted to capture within Photoshop. This is also a chance to get a nice crop in because the iPhone allows a bunch of different aspects. So I like to go for a 4:3 ratio for Instagram. That's kind of just a personal thing. It's also a little bit smaller on the phone, so you can get a little bit of a better understanding of it without some big wide photo, especially when you've been staring at it for a while. So now that we love how the final photo is looking and we've saved it, we can go on over and post it to Instagram. I like throwing a little border on there just so my feed looks pretty cohesive, but that's definitely optional. And at this point in the process, we can go through with finding a caption and making sure we're tagging whoever was involved, whether that be kind of a stylist, the model involved, or a makeup artist. And also location tagging is a lot of fun too, especially if you're traveling somewhere new. I know when I'm traveling to a new city, I kind of look at a location tag, trying to find new models around the area. Another thing you may want to think of when going to post your photos to social media is the caption. For me, I know a caption can play a huge role in the photo itself, and I connect back personally my captions to song lyrics or quotes that go along with the photo. Captioning a photo along with some kind of quote or something personal is definitely something that you can use to connect with your audience, and it's almost viewed as like a shared narrative between you guys. Also, sharing content to Instagram stories is something I find super helpful. I love sharing kind of before and after of my images along with the behind the scenes look into the shoot. So I totally encourage, even if you're starting out, to explore Instagram and other social media and what they have to offer. With that being said, I definitely don't think you should limit yourself just to Instagram or social media in general. There are a ton of other platforms and ways to share your work. So now I'm gonna go and post this photo of Isabella, and I hope you guys enjoy it. And if you've been following along, make sure to post your own. Well, congrats, you made it to the end of the class. I hope you really enjoyed getting a little better insight on how I shoot and edit my photos. I know for my creative process, it's kind of always ever-changing and evolving, but I hope to kind of keep growing and learning as I go, and I hope you do too. If you're curious about any of the technical side of things that we covered today, but didn't go into depth, we have those linked down below for you in the class resources. I hope you're able to take some of the tips and techniques we went over today and apply them into your own work and your own style. And don't forget to share your work in the project gallery down below. I can't wait to see it. I hope you guys enjoyed this class so much. I'll see you later.